every decision you take has the potential to completely transform and shift your reality and your future destiny. And this is the beauty of being a human being, is that we have this creative power between ourselves. Our mind is so creative, so powerful that it can literally shape, transform any situation toward whatever it is that we want. And there are countless examples of people who have demonstrated that all around us, and every single one of us have demonstrated this in our life at one time or another. And so we are all able, we all have the tools within ourselves to do that over and over and over again, to go from where you are to where you want to be, if you know how to use your mind in the right way to create something different. And so in this video, we're gonna look at how can you actually do that? How can you go from where you are and shift to a different timeline? But what do I mean by shifting timeline? Well, if we play with this idea for a little bit with the multiverse and quantum physics, we know that in this present moment right here, there is a wave of infinite possibility, meaning there are infinite amount of possibilities in the future, all happening at the same time, just waiting for you to choose where you want to go. So we could say there is a version of you who's already where you want to be, and there is a version of you, a different reality, that is in the worst possible situation, and everything in between. And this is the beauty of life. This is the beauty of choosing. This is the beauty of quantum leap and going into those more abstract terms. But what it really means is that in this moment right now, you have opportunities to align yourself to different realities, different timeline, different situation where you can completely live different life. So your past reality has brought you exactly where you are right now, with your life being exactly as it is, as you perceive it, as you experience it. So all the experiences, the belief, the thought, the event, everything that happens in your life have brought you here. And the beauty of that is that you don't have to let the past conditioning, the past program, your past identity keep you on the same timeline. And this is what most people do, is that they let the past create the future, because they have the same thoughts, the same identity, the same decisions, the same energy, they respond to the same way, they think about the same thing, and before they know it, their life is stagnating. And in fact, for most people, life becomes bitterest and bitterest and bitterest. If you listen to old people, often everything tastes a little bit off. If you listen to them, everything used to be better back then. Everything used to be sweeter. Everything used to be softer. Everything used to be nicer and more vivid, simply because their mindset and their state of mind, their perception, has deteriorated slowly over time. And so without them noticing, is that after a while they end up in this lower timeline. And so the world hasn't changed, but they have changed. And they used to drink Coke 20 years ago and they feel like it used to be better back then, but it's actually the same bottle of Coke or the bottle of beer or whatever it might be. It's the same, but they're testing it, they're interpreting it, they're perceiving it differently because they have changed. So if you want to be on a higher timeline, whatever that means for you, whether it's money, whether it's fame, success, happiness, health, it doesn't matter. What really matters is that you understand that if you want to go from here to this timeline, you got to change. Meaning who you are, your identity has to shift, because you cannot remain the same person here and create this reality here. It is not working together. It's like a broke person saying, I want to become a millionaire, right? There's such a big distance there, but there's a distance between those two mindsets, between those two identity, between those two energy that doesn't match. And so the broke mindset, the broke person can only perpetuate a broke timeline. So it's a process of becoming greater. It's a process of making bigger decisions. It's a process of thinking greater. It's a process of learning, unlearning. It's a process of stepping and choosing again and again and again to get on this timeline. And the bigger the distance between where you are and where you want to be, usually the greater the shift needs to happen between you. And this is where most people fail, is that they're not willing to do it, or they just think it can happen without taking action, meaning I can just visualize it, I can just affirm for it 5 minutes, but who I am really and what I really do, and breaking certain fears and stepping out and taking risks and expanding my comfort zone, showing up in my world differently with decision, this is where the biggest roadblock is, because they're afraid of what would happen if it doesn't work. They're afraid of what will people say. They're afraid they have all those limitations between them that are holding them back in the comfort zone of the current timeline, in what is known and what is familiar. And so the first step to really go and create anything that you want in your life is to actually know, where do you want to be? What is the life that you want to live? What is it that you want your life to look like, to feel like, to be like? What do you want to experience? How do you want it to be really different? So clarity is power. Most people are too focused on what I don't want to experience anymore, what I don't want anymore. But this is a big mistake, because the more you focus on what you don't have, what you don't want anymore, the more you are resisting what is actually happening in your life. It's a bit of a paradox, right? The more you focus on avoiding certain situations, the more you perpetuate or end up stuck in that situation. So you need to have the clarity to be able to answer, what would I want instead? Because then this is pointing you in the right direction. You're now deciding, you're now putting a target somewhere. And then the second step, and the biggest step, is to answer this question: who do I need to become to live on that timeline? For that timeline to become my current reality, who do I need to become? And this is where the inner shift has to change, because all of us are tied up to an identity. And one of our ego and mind biggest need is the need to remain consistent with our current identity. Hence the struggle to step out, to make different decisions, to appear and do certain things that are out of normal, out of what I consider to be me. So we need to re-engineer ourselves, re-engineer our thoughts. I cannot show up in the same situation again and again and respond in the same old way, expecting anything to change. It's like, let's say I want to be happier, I want to be healthier, I want to, to be in this place where I'm just happier, or a nice relationship, whatever it may be, right? But every day, in every situation, you keep being bitter, you keep blaming others, and you keep playing the victim card every chance you get. It is dramatically two different timelines. It is two different mindsets. It is two different personality, creating very different personal realities. And so we've got to be very transparent with ourselves. Life will reward you with who you are being. You cannot bullshit your way. You can lie to people, you can lie to yourself, but you cannot lie to this universe. And so life is fair, because life gives you exactly where you belong. Even though this can be really, really difficult to hear sometimes, but it invites us to learn something, to take a bigger look in ourselves, to take a bigger look, especially in our shadow, because most of what we do is subconscious. Most of our identity, our belief, our thoughts, our emotion, how we respond, the decisions we make, stem from our subconscious pattern. So the first is really to start to uncover, how am I currently creating my reality? How am I currently creating the result I no longer want in my life? Because this will show me directly where the shift needs to happen. And so then there is the process of taking small steps every day in breaking some of those thoughts, in starting new habits, in making new decisions, in learning new skills, in educating yourself, in going beyond who I was and stepping who I need to be. I'm going to give you an example. About 10 years ago, a little bit less, 8-9 years ago, I went from being a scuba diving instructor into becoming self-employed, an entrepreneur, starting my own coaching business. So I was here being a scuba diving instructor. That was my identity, that was my lifestyle, that was my whole world basically, right? And I had no idea about business. I had no idea about sales, about marketing, about anything that really creates this entrepreneur world, especially if you want to be a successful entrepreneur, right? And so the distance, you could say, was massive. But you see, before you even get there and you get to do that, life already challenges you. It's being like, how bad do you want to do that? Because life will start to give you opportunities, inspired action, inspired ideas. And for me, it came in form of learning about coaching, taking certification, acquiring the skills I needed to be able to do what I wanted to do, right? And so I took the plunge. I sold all my diving gears. I decided to quit my job. I went all in a way to take a strong, committed decision to go on that timeline, even though I had no idea what was going to happen past, what's going to happen then, where's the money gonna come from? All those questions, I had no idea. But at some point, you gotta take the leap and just learn to fly on the way down. And this is usually where the metaphor comes in. If you wanna take the island, you gotta burn the boat. Because when you make a radical, committed decision to invest in yourself, to change yourself, and when there is no way back to the old timeline, this is usually when people do whatever it takes to get there. And so you gotta break certain fears, you gotta get uncomfortable, you gotta break certain patterns, you gotta do certain things. You do it because there is no way back, literally. And that's really what it takes, because this game of changing timeline, even though a lot of people on YouTube will tell you it's easy, just write it on a journal and just do this and that, and light up your crystals and shit like that, and it's gonna happen. But the reality is that if you don't show up, and if you don't do what it takes, and if you're afraid to take action, if you're afraid to get uncomfortable, if you're afraid to do what it really needs for you to be there and live there, just like that version of yourself would, you're gonna hit a wall at some point where you're gonna need to wake up, because life will keep on showing you that you say you want this, but you're doing something very different. But again, those tools of affirmation and visualization and journaling and all that inner work of cleaning beliefs and so on is extremely important, of course, because without shifting those programs, it becomes extremely difficult to shift there. But I'm saying that there's also an extra step when you feel like inspired to do something, to take a risk, to expand, to do something out of what you normally do. This is usually where, in my personal experience, you really have to do it, because this is where the game really changes. This is when you really become more. And I want to share a story with you that's very inspiring, of somebody who created that big shift beyond every freaking odds, right? And it all started with being unhealthy and having a poor diagnostic about your life. You're fat, you're overweight. You gotta wake up, because this doesn't look good. Your blood's the result. Everything doesn't look good. And so that wake up call led him to have an idea to run. I'm just gonna run. I'm just gonna start by walking and progressively run. And so showing up every day, no matter what, it was tired, it was raining, it was snowing, it was difficult, he would go and run. He would go and run. So that committed decision already put him on a different timeline health-wise, right? But then after a couple of weeks, couple of months, the idea of, why don't I do a 10K marathon? And he did it, and he made it. And then a 21, and then a full marathon. Before you know it, his life is completely different than what it was. And then he became a trail runner. And then he became so good that sponsors started coming in. And before he knew it, he became champion of trail running, going from a place of being completely unhealthy to being sponsored, paid to do something he could have never imagined, simply by taking that first decided, inspired action, and to remain with it, and to do what's needed internally to not drop, and to continue to grow and make many other shifts, of course. But all of that completely changed his destiny, because he showed up every single day as that new healthy person. And so I hope this makes sense, because if we keep it very simple, it's simply about, what are you going to do today, now, in every moment. You have a decision to make, what you focus on, how you think, how you feel, what you do. And if the answer to those three questions is always the same, then you can only expect life to remain the same. But if you create a target, and you know who you need to become, and you need to know how I'm gonna show up differently to the best of my ability every single day, then step by step, your life is going to radically transform. Just like a compound effect, where at some point everything just takes off. If you show up every day, it's going to happen. Let me know what you think down in the comments. I hope this video makes sense, guys, because this is very important. Please subscribe to the channel if you like this video and want to see more of this type of content. I'll see you next time. Be well.